Hello, this is Lucille Drumgoole, and I am coming to you today to introduce to you an individual assessment interview that was performed for my Ed 5830 Psychoeducational Assessment of Learners with Disabilities class. I am very excited to be coming to you today to share this information that I received from Dr. Katrina Craig, who is currently a counselor at Bret Harte Elementary School here in Chicago. She was able to provide insight to things that I hadn't thought about. She was able to offer suggestions on different programs that I could use myself in my own classroom. There were several instances of aha moments that were shared between us, and I am excited to present this information to you. So, I am going to do it in, let's say, a talk show fashion, so you can really get a gist of how the conversation went. When I got a chance to speak with Dr. Katrina Craig, she informed me that she is a school counselor / case manager and facilitator over the SPED team at her school. Again, she is from School District 299 in Chicago, Illinois, Cook County, and I actually only got her to interview on last night, which it was extremely difficult to find the support that I needed in order to get this interview done, but I am very grateful for her, even with her kids present, being willing to perform this interview with me. So the first question that I got a chance to ask her was, what was her perspective on psychoeducational assessment? And she basically shared a view that I myself share, and that is that her perspective on psychoeducational assessment in general is that it's culturally biased. And what she meant was that some of the questions on the testing, the standardized testing that they administer, may be restrictive to those who are not in a certain area. For example, she mentioned that if you're from Nebraska and on the test it asks you to make some sort of indication of a yacht, you're not going to have familiar vocabulary with the term yacht because there's no lakes or rivers in that area. So the child maybe will experience problems with answering those questions simply because of the vocabulary barriers. She also mentioned that she had a problem with utilizing one specific test to adequately assess whether a child needs to be qualified or eligible for special education or not. She felt as though that there were numerous situational circumstances that can cause a child's learning to be affected, which we as education teachers in education, we understand that every student is different, but every student has the ability and the right to have the opportunity to learn. She mentioned that she had a kid who she was considering for special education, and she began progress monitoring the student only to find that the reason for the low performance academically was as a result of his environmental factors that caused him to not excel as well as his peers were excelling. So as I went on in the interview, I actually learned that there is a assessment that they use called the BASC, B-A-S-C assessment. And this is most widely used that she's familiar with, and she's been to a couple of schools. I actually worked with her at a school prior to coming here. But she said that this is a program that she's been using and she's most familiar with, and different school psychologists at other schools even use this program, and it's called the BASC, B-A-S-C 2. And this particular test is generally used for students, or typically used for students that need SPED services, but it basically depends on the need. If the student is performing well below level, and if there's a question of assessment for social emotional learning, then they'll use something called the SDQ, which is the Strength and Difficulties questionnaire. This actual questionnaire will be issued to the student, the teacher, and the parent alike, and then they will take all of the scores and average them out to get an idea of where the student may fall on the SDQ range, which was very interesting. She also mentioned a test called the WISC, and that's an IQ test that students could actually be issued if they are well below level, if they just need to see where they are on the spectrum of IQ. I was really excited when we got an opportunity to talk about response to intervention and multi-tiered supports, systems of supports in schools, because these are common things that I'm actually acclimated to here at our school, which is where I am actually doing this interview. These are things that we are actually doing in our school now to help students progress. So I was just missing one piece, and that was the progress monitoring piece. But fortunately, as she mentioned to me, she said that she's only been where she is for the last 2 years, and it's a process at that school for the teachers to get used to appropriately logging in gradebook the MTSS that the students need. They're doing it manually, but they're not logging it electronically. So it's very difficult for her to know who she needs to progress monitor or place on the multi-tier systems of support if the strategies and interventions aren't shared with her. So the teachers are currently doing the interventions, but they're not logging them in gradebooks, so that's a problem. So here's the exciting part. Remember, I mentioned to you that I really wanted to know how I could better service my students with progress monitoring. Well, Dr. Wright, you were 100% correct when you shared some of the resources, because when I got the opportunity to visit the resources, I knew instantly upon viewing EasyCBM that that would be something that would be beneficial in my classroom, and Dr. Craig just confirmed it. I asked her what instruments are used in assessing reading skills and progress, and how effective are they in assessing the skills, and then she says, well, I love EasyCBM. I was so excited. I smiled because she uses it, and she says it's a great tool for progress monitoring. One of the concerns I had, though, was the cost for the program. We here in Chicago Public Schools don't have a budget that could afford us the opportunity to have some of these programs in place already for teachers to use to support our students. But I will spend out of pocket money, in order to get what my students need. And then she mentioned that the subscription to EasyCBM was only about $39.99. So I was like, I'll probably do that on my own and implement that in my class, simply because not only did I read it and feel that that was a nice program, instrument to use for progress monitoring of reading skills, but I also got excited when Dr. Craig mentioned that this is something that she is using currently at her school. So as I get down to the nitty-gritty, we had difficulty understanding what question number 4 was referring to. It stated, are tests of visual perception used in your school? And if so, how often are the tests used, for what purposes, and how has the information been useful? So she, too, was trying to understand. And what I tried to assume was, if you don't understand what I'm asking you, because I definitely didn't understand what that is, and maybe Dr. Wright can clear this up later. If I didn't understand it, she didn't understand it, is it true that that definitely could it be something that we're not using in our school system? And she said, well, we do have different tests that we use for different things, but we in Chicago have only 1 or 2 professionals who are trained to use the specific tools in the district, administer these specific types of tests. For example, if a kid is having speed processing issues, they'll see the they'll see the physical therapist, and if they're having gross motor skills problems, they'll see the occupational therapist. But here in our district, which is huge, District 299, they only have 1 to 5 physical therapists and maybe only 10 occupational therapists servicing the entire Chicago public school system. That is just, I don't know what to feel about that. I also asked her what technology-enhanced assessment systems do they use at their school. She mentioned Think Through Math, and that's also something we use here. She couldn't recall the reading program that they use, but as I mentioned, we don't have a reading program at our school. So as I learn more information about easy CBM and such. I'm going to offer those suggestions to our interim principal and see if she can implement some things now to kind of help steer the students in the right direction prior to EOI. So the reason why she really appreciates programs like Think Through Math and the reading program that they use is because their students' grades are actually built into those programs. So as they complete Think Through Math, the sequence of Think Through Math, the students are actually receiving credit because it's a part of their curriculum for those completions. And so it's the same thing with the reading. Now, the real data that is drawn from these assessment tools is used in progress monitoring, seeing how the students are faring independently in the data that is performed on the Think Through Math as well as the reading program, and it can be compared to the data of one of the tests that we call the NWEA, which is our district test that they administer just to see where students lie compared to other students in the district. Finally, she believes that the curriculum-based measures of assessment used in her school are generally targeted for intensive support, but all students should be using this program to receive interventions. Every student, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, every student should have an intervention in place, because even if you're a gifted learner, there's something that we as the teachers should be implementing to help you grow independently. They don't use directly the Woodcock, Wetchler, Kaufman cognitive assessments because the school psychologists use those programs. And the process of identifying students for special education services in her school just begins when the teacher notifies her that there's a need. But as teachers, we need to do our part in creating anecdotals and creating modifications in our classrooms in order to see if we can maybe do something differently in our instruction to make sure that the student can progress. Sometimes it doesn't have to go outside the classroom. But when we find ourselves in situations that we've done everything that we can do in our classrooms and the student is still not progressing, the student is still not moving, this is where the social worker or the case manager needs to come in. But we need to have our data in place so that they can have something to work off of. And my final question for her was basically asking her if she would rather be in the regular ed classroom or be a part of the special ed team. And she says that every teacher is a special ed teacher, whether certified or not. The only difference is that special ed teachers need to be abreast on the laws associated with special ed, the applications that you need to have performed in order to staff a student efficiently. And I guess that's all for this presentation. This was a very informative interview. I'm walking away with now knowing more than I did before, the different programs. It makes me want to do a little bit more research about the BOSC. I've never heard of that before. What type of questions is on the BOSC? The WISC and things like that, the SDQ. I believe I may have filled out a couple of SDQs for students, but I didn't know what the document was. I just know I was bubbling in a lot of information. So if you found this information useful, or if you have any questions for me, please feel free to share your questions on our discussion on our discussion board, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And I thank you for your time for listening. My whole 15 minutes has just been a joy speaking with you all, sharing with you my experiences with interview with Dr. Katrina Craig from Bret Harte Elementary School here in Chicago. And this is Lucille Drumgoole signing off. Take care.